Good afternoon and welcome to Conversations on Showing Up for Kids. My name is Tim Markle. I'm the director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. We cover 14 counties in southern and southwest Wisconsin. And Showing Up for Kids is a place where we just try to get some families and professionals together, have an informal, casual place where we can talk about what is going on in families' lives. I'd like to remind you that this is being recorded, so please keep your personal identifiable health information to a minimum, preferably zero, as well as any personal identifiable information that you may have, because we all know that once something is out on the internet, it is there forever. And so we want to be careful. With that being said, I also need to remind people that I am not a doctor or in any way someone who is qualified to tell you what you should do. We are having a conversation. I am not offering medical advice. So please take that as well. Today, I'm really excited because I have a friend, someone that I've known for years, is joining us. And we're talking about something that I'm kind of afraid of, Ellie, because I am going to probably exhibit my ignorance in new ways and in new heights, because we're going to be talking Tourette and Tic Disorder. Mm-hmm. And it's not a subject that I have delved very deeply into. But I know that when this came across my desk, I'm like, well, I know exactly who I want to talk to. I want to talk to Ellie. So can you tell us, just start with this general view of what Tourette and Tic Disorder is?
Well, I think you're not alone in that. I think there's a lot of people who have little to no knowledge, right? Or what they do think about Tourette may not be accurate. So I have Tourette syndrome, and I was diagnosed in 1984. And our understanding of the disorder, like a lot of neurobiological disorders, has evolved a lot during that time. When I was diagnosed, they were still calling Tourette a rare disorder, right? Now they're saying Tourette is quite common. In fact, when you broaden it out, kind of think about autism, how, we've thought about that spectrum. Same thing with Tourette and Tic disorders now, or what sometimes people think of. So when you look at that, 1 in 10 children are going to have a tic at some point in their lives, right? So Tourette syndrome is the more intense expression of that. When it comes to the DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual definition, we're looking at a motor and vocal tic that last for over a year and that wax and wane during that time. Now, if I look at what chronic tic disorder is, right, that's a motor or vocal tic that lasts a year. So what's the difference really there? Semantics, right?
It's just, the words we use. It's right. Just words.
It's just words. So, and I like not only with Tourette syndrome, but everybody in the disability community, I think it's always helpful to look at what we have in common, where we can partner, where we can support each other. So when it comes to tic disorders, disabilities, mental health issues, hey, we're all part of this big family, right? Also, part of what's evolved around our understanding of Tourette syndrome is what goes along with it. Like a lot of other neurobiological conditions, it's often not just Tourette. Okay. I was just looking before we started. I pulled up, and I don't know if there's a way I can share my screen here or not.
You darn well should be able to, if I am half the host that I think I am. But I am also checking. You should be able to, yes.
Okay. And how I'm not, I thought I knew how to do this, but I don't. So I'll just keep moving on. I should have planned a little bit better here. But what I did was I pulled up some information from the CDC.gov, and you can go ahead and Google CDC and Tourette and take a look at this yourself if you later want to. But when we look at co-occurring conditions, among children diagnosed with Tourette, 86% have also been diagnosed with one additional mental health, behavioral, developmental disorder. We're talking high prevalence of attention deficit disorder, about 63%, oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorder, 26%. Anxiety is also very high, 49%. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, fits in there. 35% had autism spectrum disorder. Okay, so again, that's a change. It used to be that there wasn't a lot of crossover with that category. Now we're seeing professionals diagnosing both conditions together.
So now I'm going to put you on a spot a little bit. I'm going to ask you questions that we didn't cover beforehand, but it's a question that I often get when people talk to me about autism spectrum disorder, because I'm a parent of a child on the autism spectrum.
Right.
And so people are always like, well, why this change? Why so many more people? Why the prevalence? Why do you think, if you can even speak to this, why do you think there was a change where we woke up and realized that, somebody can have multiple things going on, especially when we're talking a neurological disorder? Is there something that just didn't fall right, didn't connect correctly? Well, why do we think that there's only going to be one thing that affects when our brain affects our lives and all of who we are?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with awareness, right? And again, that's something I've seen change a lot during my lifetime. As a young person with Tourette, I had very significant symptoms, including coprolalia, which is the involuntary cursing that a lot of people think of as the hallmark symptom of Tourette. Only about 10% of us with Tourette ever have that. And even those of us who have it don't have it throughout our lives. So the main way that I would accommodate my life at that point is I would do a public service announcement. When I would go into a classroom, into a school, into a church, I'd just stand up and say, hey, I have Tourette syndrome. It's a neurological disorder that makes me do sounds and movements I can't control. Sometimes they say words I don't want to say. I appreciate your understanding. And at first, when I did that in the early to late 80s, people hadn't heard the word. Now people know what it is, right? They might have a misunderstanding about what it is, but they at least have heard the word and know what's going on. So I think it's awareness in the general population. Still with Tourette, like I think one of the similarities with autism is that people are usually self-diagnosed first, right? They see these symptoms happening and then they go to the professional to get that diagnosis confirmed. So that still happens a lot. And you got to remember, most doctors, they're learning so much, right?
Yes.
Very, very broad education. And so they see someone for a few minutes, especially for a tic disorder, which in a lot of percentage of the population might be a transient tic. That might be something you only had for a little bit in your life. So you really have to delve down, take a good medical history, get an understanding of what's happening, not only with that person, but maybe some of the genetics to kind of delve out, is this Tourette syndrome? So as our systems have gotten better at doing that, our diagnostic rates are increasing. That's my thought on it anyway,
We will take your thought. Love your thought. So for family members who maybe are looking at themselves and reflecting on their own lives or looking at their children, knowing that they have this really, like you said, this limited time with the doctors, because doctors are, super busy and everything. What can families do to, if they are suspecting that themselves or their child might have Tourette or a tic disorder, Tourette or tic disorder, what sort of stuff should they be looking for? What sort of things should they be writing down to be able to share with the doctors?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to pay attention to your child. A lot of times people will take videos that they bring into the doctor. Those can be incredibly helpful, especially with something like Tourette or any other disorder where things wax and wane. Can you identify when things are tough, what's making them tough? Are there certain triggers that make things more difficult? Is that child more likely to tic, or that adult, when they're sitting watching TV, when they're stressed in the home, so looking for those patterns, being able to present what you see succinctly to the doctor can help. And it's interesting when it comes to treatments for Tourette syndrome, historically, we had medications, and we had a lot of medications that were off-label use. A lot of us who've been around for a while and had some of those early treatments, we've had experience with some of the older neuroleptics or antipsychotics. I spent time on Halidol. Medication.
That is a really powerful, and that is not to be used lightly.
Right. I have a friend who says treating Tourette syndrome with Halidol is like using an atom bomb to take care of an anthill, right?
Yes.
So again, our our options there have evolved. And one of the ones that I'm most excited about is something called CBIT, or Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics, non-medical pharmacological treatment. So basically CBIT, and I am trained in CBIT as a master's level social worker. It teaches you how to be aware before you're going to tic. Most all of us, before we tic, have what's called the premonitory urge. So it's learning to catch that urge, and then it's teaching a competing response. And that competing response needs to be done for up to a minute or until the urge to tic goes away. How I explain tic. Yep, CBIT again stands for Comprehensive Behavioral Intervention for Tics. And so basically what I tell people when I explain CBIT is what we know about Tourette is there's a lot happening in that brain stem. You know, they're talking about the caudate nucleus, really, you know, way down in there. And it's a disorder of disinhibition, right? And there are other things that all of us do that are voluntary or involuntary, but we have some control over. I think of things like breathing or blinking. You know, I can blink all I want, and it's normally just in the back of my mind, or I can put it into the conscious front of my mind and pay attention to do it. So what is happening with Tourette is something's going awry where those impulses we're usually able to inhibit, we're not, right? Or we might be doing that tic to get a certain sensation. So what happens is this is a way that we can shift our attention from that midbrain where we're not paying attention to putting up to the front of our brain. And what they're finding, they had a number of studies that have come out, including the American Academy of Neurologists recently said, a bunch of doctors who what they do is prescribe meds, they suggested that CBIT be a first-line treatment for Tourette syndrome. So that's really exciting to me because anytime that you can come up with a treatment, you know, that's does not rely on a medication, where you can teach the person to use it as a tool that they're able to use throughout their lives, that's really empowering and really exciting.
Oh, and I love the empowerment too of, you know, I can only imagine like I have nothing really to liken it to. And this is where my ignorance is going to show off. Okay.
Right.
Where I'm going to, you know, totally put out there how dumb I am. But I think of the fact that there's sometimes where, you know, my body will, you know, like I'll get a Charlie horse or something and it'll be middle of the night, it'll wake me up and it'll be just hell for that. And there's nothing I could do about it. I mean, you know, I was asleep, there's nothing. And I'm like, why are you doing this to me, body? What the heck? Why do you not like me? I am you. And so the sense that if there's a way to take back that sense of control, the sense that my body is, I am working with my body is working with me. I am not at odds with myself. I just think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, you know, one thing that I'll often do is I'll run people through an exercise, and we can do this right now if you want.
Please do.
A big deep breath and hold it. Now, as I'm having you hold the breath, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying, right? Because it's really important and you need to pay attention to what's happening. You never know what's going to go on later, and I might be asking you about things. Anybody feeling like they need to breathe yet?
Can't do it.
Yeah, that sense of tightness in your chest,
yes,
and comfortableness is the closest I can give you to what it feels like prior to a tic, right? So a lot of times the tic that I do will relieve that sense of tightness and uncomfortableness. So if I can give you a strategy to do that in another way, and just like urges, there's a lot of parallels to the urge surfing that people might know about from dialectical behavioral therapy or just general mindfulness and meditation. Over time, those urges will go away, right? If I learn to deal with it. So it's teaching a strategy that can be really helpful. Now, I want to be clear that CBIT isn't a cure, right? It's about as effective as medication. It works for about 50% of the people, but why not try it? It's sometimes hard if people have a lot of co-occurring disorders, especially if there's a lot of untreated attention deficit issues, to tune into the skills you need to learn. And people are more able to be open to it at certain periods in their lives, right? A very young person might not have the skills to really learn CBIT, but it's a really exciting development. I did see a question coming in on the chat on where can families get information about professionals providing CBIT. And yeah, the best place to go is Tourette.org. That's our national association, and they have a provider search list you can look for there. There is also a product called Tic Helper, TIC Helper, and that's designed by Dr. Doug Woods and others. Doug Woods is right here in Wisconsin. He's now at Marquette University, and he's been one of the researchers who's worked on the CBIT model for quite some time. So you can get that individual work, or you can look at the CBIT Tic Helper. Those are two ways that you could learn more. And I want to tell you just a little bit about Tourette.org. They have a ton of free resources for families and people with Tourette. One of the things I am a big proponent of is peer support, right? That making that connection of somebody who knows what you're going through. And that's true for us as parents. It's true for us as youth. It's true for us as adults, because most of us who live with Tourette live with it for much of our lives. For some people, we do grow up and tics get a lot better. That's certainly the case for me, but I still have Tourette and I still manage it every day. And there's nothing that can really replace connecting with somebody who knows what it's like to live with it, who's been on the same journey.
So are there ways to connect through Tourette.org that you can say, hey, could somebody, I just want to talk to somebody.
Right. So they can connect you back to our local chapter. Our local chapter does typically have more events, when we can publicly gather. Right now, we do have a closed Facebook page. It is Facebook, so pay attention to that. It is a public platform. It's a way to connect with people. The conference we have coming up, the Tourette Connections, is another way to make some connections and learn some more. But we're always trying to help people make those connections with others so that they know they're not alone. That's why I've been involved since I've been diagnosed. It's been the most powerful, more powerful than any medication, any coping skill, has been connecting with others who've gone through the same thing and helped me to know I'm not alone. When I went to my first conference at age 17, my world opened. I met with doctors and lawyers and plumbers and teachers, all who had Tourette syndrome. And all of a sudden, I was a part of a community because of something that I'd typically been excluded because of. You can't sell that.
No, that is exactly. I mean, we just have this desire to belong, to belong to something and to be recognized and to be affirmed instead of shut out for who we are, for what is a part of us. So that is huge. Now, before we go to the conference, because I want to talk about the conference, because I think you guys have done something really cool in how you're presenting your conference in the time we have. But I want to go back briefly to this co-occurring diagnosis, because I know that, again, some people have problems getting help when they have like a primary diagnosis of blank. Then like mental health providers don't want to treat their anxiety. Or treat their OCD because they say, well, that's just a product of blank. So how does that work with Tourette and Tic disorder?
Yeah, I think certainly it's always looking at, I apologize. I'm going to go take care of that. I'll be right back.
No problem. I will sit here and do some show tunes. Okay, so I'm really not going to do show tunes. All these that are listening and that maybe aren't the recording.
Right. So
I'm
sorry.
not doing show tunes. So
You're not.
Welcome back.
Darn it.
Look, I'm not. Sorry.
Didn't realize my clock radio would go off. A little bit old school. So one thing I think is always helpful to look at is what is the presenting issue, right? For a lot of people with Tourette and co-occurring disorders, they'll say, hey, the tics aren't the problem right now. What's more problematic to me is my obsessive compulsive symptoms, or the attention deficit is really impacting my ability to learn in school. So it's understanding what's primarily difficult for you and then finding a professional who can help you with that. most effectively. If it's ticks, again, you can go to Tourette.org. We have a provider search function on the website that can connect you with doctor and other associated health providers who can provide treatment around that.
Awesome. So let's talk conference, because I'm really excited about this upcoming. So we were talking earlier that a year ago, you're approaching your annual conference, and a year ago, we're all just learning about Corona and coronavirus. And we weren't sure whether it was something that we should make fun of or take seriously. How serious was it? And who could we trust? And in the midst of that, you guys were planning a large gathering of people.
Right. Yeah. And we did go ahead and cancel that conference in early March. Then we thought, well, how do we do this? And what we came up with as our stand-in was a webinar series. So we thought rather than have a virtual conference that happened just in one day, we would do a series. And it was pretty successful last year, and we hope that it will be successful again this year. So it's kicking off actually next Wednesday, the 24th, and it runs through the month of March. It's every Wednesday at noon Central Time, and you can sign in to learn. If you're a social worker and want continuing education hours, we can offer you a free continuing education hour if you listen in real time. The webinars will be recorded, but we can't offer those CEHs unless you listen in real time. So, you got that, but they're open for everybody. I like to say that they're appropriate for people with tics or Tourette syndrome, family members, professionals, friends, your neighbors, anybody you want to learn more.
Yeah. People that are looking to learn a little bit more like me.
Yeah.
So that's, I have a few of them on my calendar. They fit in.
Good. The one I'm really excited about they're all good, but Dr. Sarah Reed is starting us off, and she's talking about compassion resilience. And I think given COVID, that's such an important topic. I mean, we all get there, right? As professionals, as parents, sometimes it's just hard to keep up compassion when we're stressed and frustrated and pulled in a million different directions and still dealing with our new normal. So that's something that's applicable to everybody. You don't necessarily need to have, a Tourette connection or interest to tics, but if you just want to learn more about compassion resilience, please encourage others. If you Google Tourette connections, it should come up for you. You can see the whole series. We'll have a doctor talking about Tourette, Dr. Walkup from Children's in Chicago is quite a well-known expert on that. We'll have Dr. Woods, who I mentioned before, talking about CBIT, or behavior therapy for children with tic disorders. Harriet Redmond's going to talk with us about siblings and things that parents and professionals should think about when they're dealing with siblings with Tourette. And I'm so excited about that. I've been wanting to work with Wisconsin Sibs for a lot of years. So this is our year. We get to make that connection. We'll be showing a movie, OCD Unstuck, which is a kids movie focusing on OCD and OCD treatment. And then finally, we're doing a little bit backwards, but our keynoter will be the end speaker, and that's Stephen McCall. Stephen has just a lot of great wealth of resources. He's been involved, the federal government doing a lot with defense. He's written a musical. And he talks about his own experience growing up with Tourette syndrome in Detroit, and especially does a lot of work with the African-American community. We're always working to expand our reach into making sure that everybody with Tourette syndrome gets diagnosed. It doesn't really fall under any specific racial or ethnic lines, but yet when we see for diagnoses, what we see are not enough people of color being diagnosed. So we want to close that gap and create awareness there too.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's not like, ooh, I want more people to have this, but if they're not diagnosed, if they're not aware of the help that's available, then they're not going to get that help and the support that they need.
Yeah.
And so if they keep getting misdiagnosed, then they're going to keep getting mistreated.
Yes. So many times people will, especially with kids of color, boys of color, it's quick to see this child's acting out versus this child needs some support, so we want to change that narrative for folks.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I do know that we have some people that are listening in live, and I want to give them the chance to ask you any questions. You can unmute your mic. You can put them into the chat. We'll just give you some time here to formulate them. If you don't, then we'll just continue to have a conversation for a little while more. But if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute or place them in the chat. Again, this is where I could do a show tune. Really, nobody wants me to do a show tune.
As we wait, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be able to talk to you today and teach you a little bit more about Tourette syndrome. I think, a lot of times people will ask me, what's the best thing that I can do to support somebody with Tourette syndrome? I think that acceptance and compassion goes a long way, especially with kids. Giving kids the choices when you can is very important. It's really hard to have to sit in a seat or be a certain way when your body is doing things that you don't want it to do. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think that for a lot of times we see improvement when people age, because you have just so many more options on choices that you have in your life. Nobody at this point in my life requires me to ask permission to go to the bathroom, right? I can just get up and do it. If I feel like I have the need to take a break, I can do it. I've found what works for me for healthy coping mechanisms. I was talking with Tim beforehand. I've taken up, during the pandemic, I've taken up trail running. So finding those positive outlets to really deal with my excess energy and finding things that help my tics has been a lifelong journey. And I think it is for most people. So if we can support folks on that way, no matter their age, that helps a lot. And I saw a question coming in. Is it free? Yes, the conference is free. You do need to register for each session individually. So please do register. Please share it with folks. The more, the merrier. We'd love to have you all.
Well, and as you're talking, it just strikes me that is one of the things that we talk with families and professionals about with whatever the disability is, is the importance of understanding how is it affecting me? How is it affecting the person? And how do I react to the world around me, and what can help me? It's not a one size fits all. We are highly complex beings between our brains and our bodies, and we can learn from each other, but we all experience life in our own way.
Yes.
So we are all going to find help in our own way as well.
So many of these strategies cut across any disability or difference, right? I mean, it's really about what we want to look at is a developmental perspective that encourages empowerment over time. Because whether you're a professional, a friend, a parent, we're not always going to be there for that young person. Yeah. So, the more strategies we can help that person to develop, the broader the depth of support they have beyond just mom, beyond just dad, it makes a huge difference. And I know as a parent to the special needs kids, how scary that is to do too. So, it's creating those communities that we feel comfortable helping our child to grow up in.
I love that. Is creating those communities, having those safe places where our kids can be themselves, where, yes, we want them to grow. Yes, because they're kids, because we want all kids to grow. As an adult, I want to continue to grow. So helping them be aware of what's going on inside of them, more aware of their body, aware of their thoughts, so that they can then do self-cares. Again, because we're going to get stressed when our friends aren't with us or when our families aren't there. So what do we do when we're alone on that bus and all of a sudden life isn't going the way we want it to go? Is helping us learn what is our body telling us. I think is really important. Did you see the question in the chat?
Yeah, I saw Stephanie's got a great question, and I'll read it out. She's asking about support for a child who's got Tourette along with ADHD, OCD, ODD, and anxiety, specifically how she can help when she's feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Great question. I think, first of all, your child best, right? You know what's working for her. So connect with that. I find that, especially with a child of that age, teaching some self-calming and self-regulating strategies are incredibly helpful. Reaching out for your own support when you get frustrated and stressed, because we all know as mamas, when we're dysregulated, our kids are going to be more dysregulated. And it's like they've got a sixth sense around that, right? So that whole making sure we're calm and comfortable ourselves first, modeling that. One of my favorite strategies to use for kids, we used to use this at camp a lot, was to play a game called Still Waters, where we'd have everybody lay on the floor and we'd just have them pretend they were water, so the water can be wavy, the water can be stormy, the water can be calm and still, so try a different way to maybe approach some of those strategies than you would with an adult. Make it fun, make it a game. Is it something that you can all do together? One of the things that I recall from growing up, and I've certainly heard other people with Tourette say, is, when a strategy is targeted to you and you feel like you're the bad one or you're the wrong one, sometimes that can be really hard to swallow. Everybody in the family, can benefit from getting up and taking an exercise break or using those things to calm down. So I guess that would be the big thing I'd take a look at first is, do you want to focus on some strategies to release some of that tension and energy, or do you want to focus on some calming strategies? And then pick one or two that you practice over time as a family to make that work for you. And don't forget about yourself, because you're important too.
Yeah, I love that. Is that we had a time with my kiddo with autism. He also struggles with anxiety.
Yep.
And so not just teaching him those techniques, but reminding him, we still do this to this day. I mean, he learned these techniques 10 years ago, and he'll still come up and he'll come into the room and he's already overly agitated. Yep. And his voice is up, and we know that, he may just be excited.
Yep.
But one of the first things we do is, okay, before you talk to me, just breathe. Yep. Just calm your body down so then you can express what you want to express.
Right. Can we take a breath together? And what's great is when your child puts it back on you. You need to take a minute to chill out. Gosh, yeah, I do.
Yeah, exactly. Can we just have a short break here, Mom?
To me, that's when things are really working, because sometimes we'll do that, right? We'll label the child with the disorder, but we're just addressing things.
Yeah, it's amazing to me the way that we expect children to be regulated. Yep. When I have so many adult friends who wander around unregulated,
right?
Who just allow themselves to, it's just, unregulated. And that it's something we need to watch out for in ourselves too. And that whole sense of self-awareness, because I love what you said, is that the more regulated I am, the more even I am, the more my kid's going to see that. And it's going to help them, but it's also going to show them the possibility.
Yes.
That there is the opportunity to live differently.
Yeah.
To live more regulated, is I don't have to live 1,000 miles per hour out of control. There's options.
Our kids teach us, don't they? And Stephanie had a follow-up here. She said she has an app that she uses in her family. And I'm wondering on their tablet, and I'm wondering what that app is. That might be a resource that other people would like to.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If you could put that into the chat, Stephanie, that would be fantastic. She also just want to know, Missy, but you seem to have covered the main techniques that people have, because it can get hard. I mean, because obviously we're unregulated when we get to that spot. We're not listening to ourselves the best. Something has happened that has put us out of control. And so to just suddenly expect someone to get back into control is not going to happen.
Right. And we talked about peer support. I guess that's the other thing I'll mention again. That's so huge. Another resource I forgot before. There's a great podcast out there called Tourette's Podcast. TOURETTE''S podcast. I'll Google it and put a link in chat. But that's just stories, mostly adults, but I think they have some youth stories on there too. And that's a great way, especially during the pandemic, to connect with other people and learn you're not alone.
And that's I think that's an important part with disabilities. I'm sure Tourette and Tic Disorder is the same with some of our other developmental disabilities that I see, that I don't really want to have it. Yes. I want to try to deny that I have it. But once I figure out that this is a part of me, that it's going to be with me for the rest of my life, I kind of make peace with that. Then I can look at how can I get help and how can I get support and where can I find my tribe?
Yeah.
Who else is there like me?
Who else is there? Right. We have a really active camp just over the border in Fox Lake, Illinois. It's the longest running Tourette camp in the nation. I do think they're going to have a session this year. So if, and I'm a big fan of approaches, recreational approaches for kids, especially. It's a whole lot easier to play a game of ball, to get out in a canoe, to do a climbing wall, make connections with a friend. It's called Tourette Camp USA, and I'll put a link to that too. And then learn about Tourette. Unfortunately, I'm of the age where my experience was I sat in a circle where a social worker said, let's go around the room and talk about what you don't like about having Tourette syndrome. Oh, yuck.
Yeah, that's delightful.
So, you know, any kind of thing we can do where we can slip it under the radar for kids or families. Our chapter hopefully will again be able to have a water park weekend someday where we just, you know, meet up at the Dells, enjoy a water park, get together, meet with other families and other kids. And that was a great experience for us.
Well, hopefully stuff will continue to change.
Right.
So that we can continue, so that we can come back together.
Right.
In those groups and in those tribes and in those places where we just can be ourselves, where we don't have to pretend. Yes. Because that takes a lot of energy to pretend. Well, I love having this conversation. I could probably talk for the rest of the afternoon, just because I really enjoy it. But any final questions from anybody? And I'm not seeing anything. Oh, so Stephanie says it's a video on Go Noodle and it's titled Melting. So that's the app that she uses. Nice. That sounds really cool. And you can find it on YouTube. Okay.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'll check that out.
So much. Yeah. What do you want to have a final word, Ellie, about conference, sure, about Tourette, about family support? It's all yours.
Keep connecting with each other. Find those people where you can get your support, because this is a long haul. You know, whether you're a parent of a child with a disability, whether you're a person with a disability yourself, making those connections make a big difference. Google Tourette Connections or Tourette.org. We'd love to be able to support you if we can.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on and sharing, you know, not just the information, but sharing yourself. And I just really appreciate that. So thank you so very much. And if people would like to just hang on just a couple minutes, I'm going to stop the recording. And then if you want to have a conversation with Ellie briefly offline, totally can understand that too. So just give me a moment to stop the recording. And everybody who's listening, thank you for listening.
Appreciate it.